Good morning and welcome once again. Today we are having a very special video this day of the calendar, first day of summer. Today we'll be looking at a book from my friend and author Sean Fricks, who I hope I'm saying his last name correctly. In book 1 of a trilogy, possibly a series, called Necromanteia, Necromantic Apotheosis, which is published by Sirius Esoterica, which is Edgar Cavall's publishing house. You can order it off Sirius Esoterica, and I'm going to forewarn you now. It is in Colombian currency, so it may say 65,000, but it's really $65 USD. To which shipping from Colombia to the United States, you're going to be spending $95 per book. A little steep, but you know, these books are quality made. They have little metal tips to make it stand out. And it comes with its own little bookmark in each book. And when you order newer books, some of them come with like little cloths and such. The link to the website will be in the description. Please check them out. Necromanteia, Necromantic Apotheosis is a book in a series that takes the willing practitioner down ages past to learn real necromancy, and not necromancy from Hollywood, horror, or science fiction authors. For necromancy is mainly an art of divination. But apotheosis, isn't that obtaining godhood? Well, yeah. But in this context, as he states in the very beginning, instead of obtaining godhood, you are obtaining the knowledge to master this art. From many spirits, meaning that each spirit has knowledge to a certain point. You can go to spirit, learn from them, gain knowledge of what they know, or in this case, what they knew. Then once you have obtained what you can, or what the spirit is willing to allow, you go on to the next spirit and learn from them. You keep doing this until you keep mastering and gaining. But to obtain this apotheosis and knowledge of the dead, there are 4 goals, and I've written them in layman terms. To gain knowledge of the future. To gain lost knowledge or wisdom. Legal knowledge for worldly purposes. Closure in healing, which I have quite a bit of experience with closure and healing, as you can see in my Mother's Day video, either up here or at the end of the video. Mr. Fricks goes over the various words and meanings and definitions related to necromancy, which I always just thought there's the one. I'm not going to even say it. If you want to find out, go ahead, do your research, because there's a word that can be very, very easily misconstrued and taken very offensively. So I'm going to let you, the viewer, you, the listener, to do your own research on the various definitions of necromancy. He also goes into necromancy from various points in time: Mesopotamia, Greece, and Rome, alongside prominent examples from Odin, the Jews of Israel, the Celtic, medieval Europe, which a lot of what we perceive to be necromancy, like Army of Darkness, with the skeletons running around, the Lich, etc., and even Taoist China, which I say series because he has a fourth necromancy book, and I'm saying this because it has necromancy in the title, called Taoist Necromancy, which is his book entirely on Tao and necromancy, obviously. I haven't acquired that book yet. There are certain rites and tools one will make and wear and acquire. So please check your state's local laws on buying and owning human remains. Legally, that is. The Bone Room is one particular website that you can purchase human bones legally. I know some states aren't as generous, but on the states that you can, my advice is to please keep your paperwork in a convenient and handy spot in case the police ever come questioning you. Do not, and I repeat, do not do what many have done throughout history. Go out to the grave and dig them up. Because this isn't your typical grimoire. You will have to do your own additional research, and majorly you have to read in between the lines. He doesn't come out and give you spells and spells and spells, elixirs, potions, and all of that. No. He gives you lore. And as I say, understanding the metaphor in the lore. I'm going to start saying that. Being said, he does cover some areas where you may have to do additional things, like going to a graveyard, but nothing of illegal nature. And that's really the one of the bad things about this book. You have to try to get into a cemetery or graveyard to do certain things. And, well, we all know that, rowdy teenagers and homeless people like to get into cemeteries and cause ruckuses. My second downside to this is owning a human skull, because there's a ritual that you'll use the skull to house a spirit in, and that's pretty pricey for an incomplete skull. It's even more expensive if you want a complete skull. The Bone Room will sell you, but it's almost as bad as a down payment on a car. So, definitely an expensive magical art. But yes, understanding the metaphor and the lore. But however, there is a few sections where he does talk about spell work in particular. For a few, he has Clepothic, and majority of it is Goetic necromancy, with generous information on which daemons to work with, and that you will have to apply, again, additional knowledge. There are a few other systems mentioned as well. But overall, this isn't for the beginner. This isn't the thin little black book by Lucien Raphael, which is also a very good book, which I've done a review on this channel, also in the end screen there. You're getting a quality made book. That's the pro. You're getting research. We've talked about that he's pretty much done his homework, especially his Taoist China necromancy book. He knows what he's talking about, and I trust him, unlike a few other big name practitioners who had quote unquote necromancers and just mysteriously vanished. EA quitting. Anyway, if you're looking for raising the dead, zombies, and skeletons, this ain't it. This is not it at all. But if you want to learn through divination, magic, from the spirits, it is a grimoire filled with love and history and magic. Con, out of all of that, you may have to spend a lot of money to get a house for a spirit. And another con is, once again, going to your local graveyard and cemetery to perform certain rites. If you are curious and want to start necromancy, I would say start with Necromancy by Luciferian Raphael, or Lucian Raphael. I would start there because his book is really thin and you can read it in a day. I would start there. He makes a great entry point. Constantinos has a book on spirit workings. That one I would also recommend. But if you want to get serious, the Necromanteia books are the way to go. And, they'll look nice on your bookshelf. But there is a lot of knowledge to be gained. At least in here, in book 1, we obtain the apotheosis of knowledge as a necromancer. And for $65 before shipping and handling, I think it's worth it. Now I know what you're saying, but Karos, I'm willing to do this, but that's a lot of money. Well, lucky for you, he has cheaper alternatives that you can find on Amazon, paperbacks, but the con with those is they're not really artwork covers that you would expect. I will also link that in the description. In each video, I will link the appropriate book. And they're very reasonable in the paperback form, but I myself splurged to get the hardbacks. And for anyone else that's curious about it, you will gain at least a historic knowledge, if anything. And at the end of the day, I think that's still a good thing. The lore and myths need to be preserved. Welcome back. Welcome back to Necromanteia book reviews. We are here today in Volume 2, where we have a revisit on Necromancy from Volume 1, and some of the previously mentioned lore, given a little recap here, so we're not going to go into that. But what sets this volume from book 1 is, 1, the author wants to drive home the origins. History is important, and that will be referenced later on in the video, about knowing the importance of what you are doing, the research you are putting in. We go into spell work in various cultures, and of course, he wants you to do your own research, and it is heavily applied. If you are not willing to do the work, then walk away. This isn't for you. Mr. Fricks wrote these grimoires for intelligent people to read beyond, to read in between. And if you are not a lazy armchair magician or a meme witch, and actually not afraid to put in the work and do the work and look into the work, well, that's great. Now I'm skipping the previously mentioned, and we're going into point 1, the chapter on Taoist Necromancy. The author, Mr. Fricks, goes into almost great detail and offers Eastern versus Western terminology, explores the hungry ghosts, obtaining spirits, the infamous corpse walkers, and a few other things I want you to buy the book and read into. And you can also read into the main book, Taoist Necromancy, which he has told me that he has spent a good majority of time and dedication into Taoist Necromancy. And as I said, he has a whole book on Taoist Necromancy. And then the previous chapter we go into Celtic Necromancy and animals. Now this one I'm just going to give the briefest of things, because I'm not stupid, I'm just a little dumb, and big words in the Celtic language give me a, how do you say, a tongue twister. Now this section is very beautiful in the fact that it explores Celtic necromancy, almost similar to shamanism, which in a way shamanism is a form of necromancy. And it goes through animals. In this chapter, we explore more into reincarnation. When you die, you get reincarnated as an animal, so on and so forth, which is in popular culture today. And it's explored in the tale of Tuan Mac, son of Karos, and I'm pretty sure I butchered that, but I'm sorry. He also gives us Celtic terminology as well. And then we go into more Clepothic necromancy. Here in this chapter, he gives a more in-depth from the first volume of knowledge, comparing Goetic names and offerings to Hades and all that. The art of necromancy through certain Goetic spirits and names. And he gives you the sigil and a brief and minor description of who they are and what they do. Again, research is heavily applied. And then we go into the chapter of creating an oracle skull. An oracle skull is the skull of a very learned person and must have its entirety, i.e., the bottom jaw has to be attached. And once you find the right stuff, you can turn this skull into an oracle skull for divinatory practices. And I believe it lasts up to 85 years before the spell dissipates. He goes and gives the story of Skull of the Prodigy Kid, as well as various other forms of oracle skulls. It's a pretty neat chapter. But again, you have to check your local laws on owning human remains and buying human remains. And obtaining human remains illegally is frowned upon. Don't do it, kids. And then we have the Necromancer's Steed, the Horse of the Dead, also referred to as Hellheist or Hellhest. And working with this messenger between the living and the dead. Nothing really more to say on that. It's like a really short thing. However, to my surprise, we're going to get into the interesting aspect of this book. And I'm not saying that I know for a fact, but I'm not really a Star Wars aficionado. I'm not really familiar with the expanded universe. I'm just familiar with the canon films and the TV shows. Well, not the Clone Wars. I found that kind of boring, honestly. But in this book, we explore Sith necromancy. Now, the Sith have been always the dark side of the Force, and I made a previous video, and Star Wars recently has been very applicable to spirituality and mysticism. I mean, in my previous video, I compared, some of the things that can be used in spirituality. on top of there actually being Jedi and Sith practices, like actual practices, like to the equivalent of H.P. Lovecraft specific practices. And there's a lot of left-hand path teachings with the Sith. And I'm not 100% sure, but I think we go into the expanded universe deep lore in this chapter with the Sith and the tale of the Scroll of Sith Sorcery, which is forbidden. So when we get to episode 9, where the planet the Emperor was on, which is the Sith homeworld, if I'm not mistaken. If I am, I'm sorry, it's been a year since I watched it. And it's really sad because I identify with the Sith more than I do the Jedi. We kind of get that feel of, you know, what came before in the ruins. Because really, Star Wars has always been mysticism and science and technology living at the same time. And then we go into the Scroll of Dwam-Mutkasa and the relation with the tale of the Traveler and the Mummy. We learn in the Scroll of Dwam-Mutkasa, I'm sorry if I'm butchering that, words. We learn that we are to be careful in calling up what we cannot put down. Ego and pride, the loss of everything, and the pushing yourself to obtain the power in knowledge you seek, and ultimately the act of being consumed by it, letting it swallow us whole. Which, honestly, there is a lot to take in with that particular story that all mystics and occultists and practitioners should read, because a lot of it can be applied to real life. Even the dark side goes dark in some aspects. There's more to it than what the Emperor Palpatine was always going on about. And if you're a Star Wars aficionado, you know what I'm saying. And then the next tale, the Traveler's Mummy, we learn again about ego and pride, but we also learn the importance of taking things from the dead without permission. We also learn about communing with the dead and being offered great knowledge, which is the point of necromancy, as well as the dangers and promises and tricks that the dead, if not careful, can, well, betray you on. Just because they're dead, that doesn't mean they're good. So, I'd like to close out this video that no matter what culture or pop culture you find yourself in or watching, necromancy is universal and much richer in lore if you're willing to do your research, dig deep. And if you are a smart person, you can read in between the lines and be able to put things together, getting out there and doing the work. And that's what Mr. Fricks is accomplishing with these 3 grimoires. This particular book, Volume 2, is more of a grimoire. And then Taoist Necromancy is, in my opinion, Book 4. And with, people obsessed with South Korean culture, Japanese culture, and Chinese culture, it's only logical that Oriental mysticism is huge as well. And then finally, once again, please check your local laws in obtaining human and owning human remains. Please do not desecrate graves. Do not steal from the graves. There are various websites where you can legally obtain human skulls and bones. It is highly, highly advised that you check your local laws. I know New York, for example, is a state where you cannot. So, please be advised. Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to another exciting episode of Necromanteia book review. They say the third in a series is hit or miss, but when it comes to necromancy, lore, and magic, it'll be leaving you wanting more. So let's conjure up what Book 3 has to offer. I want to start off by disclosing that I was sent this copy for review beforehand. Books 1 and 2 I bought on my own, and I am very appreciative for this opportunity. It has taken me some time to do this review, but here it is. And really, I couldn't do the review properly without doing book reviews on books 1 and 2. What sets this volume apart from 1 and 2 is this one is all lore. There are some spells, but everything else is just lore heavy. Excerpts from stories that align with the art of necromancy. Being said, this one is thicker of a book, and that's okay. Myths and lore are vital to any variation of magic. Same as before, we have previous entries that help make up this grimoire. We start with the Necromancer of Endor, Saul conjuring up Samuel, the skull of the prodigy child, a Jewish boy, and the skull in Demons of the Goetia, the Klepoth, with surprising expansion on necromancy in the Goetia. As I have stated before, this grimoire are not your typical grimoire. Mr. Fricks wants you to put the effort in what is the fun in doing it yourself, doing the research yourself. I mean, you could buy a cake or take the journey to the store, buy the fresh ingredients, take the time to make and cook the cake, and then all your hard work is paid off when it is done. The same goes for magic. And that's also here in the Necromanteia book series. And I cannot stress this enough. Please obey your local laws on buying and owning human remains. So to start this book, and I'm not going to go over everything because I want you to buy and experience the book yourself. We have the Odyssey, the Kingdom of the Dead. We start with the Necromancer's robe. We are given what and what the robe should be adorned with. Then we get into Odysseus on his journey home and when he conjured up the dead. Which, to be honest, I didn't know that part. But then again, I've only ever watched, like, abridged versions of it. And to be fair, it's been over 20-something years since I've seen anything. And then we go into probably my two favorite stories by Clark Ashton Smith. We see in Necromancy and Nyat by Clark Ashton Smith that we have necromancy comes with a cost, and nothing is quite the same in the physical sense. Also, the morality is be careful in what we are looking for. We will get it, but not as we thought. Now, this story is more akin to zombie and Haitian voodoo. And then the next story is continuing with Clark Ashton Smith's mythos entries. We have the Empire of the Necromancer, where the moral of this story is never summon what you can't put down. Power and knowledge can corrupt and lead us to our downfall. And that one's probably my favorite out of the whole book. Then we have Eliphas Levi and the invoking of Apollonius of Tyana. This is an excerpt from his adventures in summoning Apollonius. To be fair, I know the name Eliphas Levi, but I never really dug into him. Then we have the Necromancer, or the Tale of the Black Forest. And this is an excerpt to a larger story where conjuring the dead to get out of a sticky lock-in situation in a castle. And then we have the infamous Edward Kelly, Woodcut. You know, the one where he and a friend have a spirit in the circle. You might know the meme of it with Boo from Super Mario. And then on to Adventures in Necromancy. We have a deal with a demon, Lucifuge, in being reunited with a loved one. And the necromancer's ability to summon back his lover. And interesting to note that this is where I got the offering brandy to a demon, as I do that with Belieth. And for those who don't know, brandy is brandy wine, which is a type of wine where it looks and kicks like a whiskey. And then we get into the spell portion of the book. We come back to the necromancer's robe with the same details. And then he provides us with a necromantic glossary covering all the various definitions in this art. Then we have the history, Liber Malorum Spiritum Seu Goetia, using necromancy to find treasures with dates and times. A ritual to become a necromancer initiation ritual. Summoning a dead person from the earth with instructions. To see and speak with invisible spirits. Except for this ritual requires going to a cemetery, which is kind of hard to do if you live in the city, unless you know an abandoned one. The summoning of morts is to summon and pin the spirit to answer your questions. And then we once again go into an expanded Goetia studies. And then he concludes the book with a list of the specific Goetic demons to work with. Overall, I have intentionally left a few things out because I want you to make the journey in necromancy yours. Just as mine journey will be different from Mr. Frick's and various others. I want you to discover the magic, pun intended, like I did. Despite this book being lore heavy, there is valuable information, and as the other two former volumes, if you can read between the lines, then you will find what you are looking for. Just like the grimoires of old. And as of writing the script for this video, 9/17/2024, pre-orders are up for the 4th volume, to which I am excited. You can find this at seriouslimited.esoterica.com. A link is in the description. And with that, I hope you have found this video tantalizing. And if you like lore and myths, this is for you. And as I said, lore and myths are vital to any craft, because it is a history lesson of sorts. And when I acquire book 4, you bet there's going to be a review for that one as well.